Hey guys, John here at Common Sense Outdoors. So if you can see this contraption behind me, I'm going to show you a trap today. Before I do, let me say, if you want to try this, be careful. Be careful in setting it. And this would be a trap that would be for a survival situation only. By no means go out and build one of these and leave it set. The last thing you want to do is end up with a neighbor's dog or something in it. Plus, it would be against the law to have it set unless it was a survival scenario. So, and I had this idea in my head. I don't know if you can see me very well. I had this idea in my head, and it's very true that one or two trigger systems or 2 or 3 different kinds of traps is sufficient. If you know 2 or 3 good traps, you're pretty set. However, the reason I've had this in my head is because this one right here I have set up for medium-sized game. You know, fox, coyote, bobcat, hog, pig, or hog and pig, same thing, goat, anything in that range. If you jump up to deer size, which you could do with this exact same setup, you just have to make it larger scale. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But there really is, as far as a medium to large size game traps out there that people are showing, there's a lot left to be desired. They're not great traps out there. Yes, I could hoist, if I had the cordage, I could hoist a big log up in the air and put bait underneath it and have that come down and smash the animal or something like that. But what I've done here is something that can be done with small materials. You can see my poles and everything are small. It does take a little bit of cordage. I did all of this with my Mora companion and my little folding saw and bank line. Except for the trigger string, I've used a piece of inner paracord strand because it's white and I wanted you to be able to see it. So basically what I'm getting at is it doesn't take big materials to make a trap that will get you medium to large game if you put it together right. Like I said, I've had this idea in my head for a while. Came out today. This is the first time I've ever built one. It took me about 2 hours to make it. Make all the pieces. Well, the spikes I used from the improved Klepsy trap that I showed you a couple days ago. But I added a little time in the time it would have taken me to make that spike rail. So about 2 hours I played with this. But I also tried several different trigger systems before I came up with one that I liked. And there is another trigger option that would work really well if the situation was just right. And that would be to use a cordage from the back of the trap up to another tree and then back down to the ground and on a toggle stick. But this one is really simple, works really good. I'm going to get the camera and pick it up and walk you around and show it to you. Like I say, it took me a couple hours of playing with this and making all the pieces and putting it together. But this is something that I could use over and over and over. Once the pieces are made, I could easily move it to another location. And this trap is set up on a trail for trail set kill without having to have any bait. So let me get the camera and I'll walk you around and start showing it to you, and we'll talk about it as we go. And then what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through how I made it, but in reverse. In other words, I'll kind of take it apart in reverse to how I made it, since I don't want to go through 2 hours. Well, it wouldn't take me 2 hours this second time now that it's all made, but to put it all together, we'll just take it apart in reverse, I think. And I'm trying to keep it somewhat not too long of a video. The longer the video is, it seems like it takes forever to upload it. So you can see right here, there's a little bit of a trail coming through here. And I just have two trees. I found a spot on the trail with two trees next to each other. This log on the ground down here is just put there to keep the animal over further, closer to the trees. And this could be, you know, if it was for real, it could totally be brushed in more on the outsides here to make sure that that animal goes right through here. But for demo's sake, I just have a piece of wood on the ground that should make them walk right through here. And you see my trip line right there. Up at the top, I just have a bar tied across the two trees. And my trap is basically a rectangle. And I've tied this whole setup piece here. This whole swing arm is just tied to my crossbar that goes across the trees here and here. And then on the back, I stole the same spike rail that I had made for the improved Klepsy trap the other day. Just tied it on to make the bottom of the rail. And I have a very heavy piece of madrone tied on there for weight. And you want that weight all the way to the back of the rectangle. You don't want it up in here, you want it all the way back here, because what that's going to do is give you centrifugal force. As this thing cuts loose and swings down, that weight out there on the end is going to give you more force than if the weight is up in here. And if you were going to do this for a larger game, even larger game, you could very easily add in a second row of spikes. You could make your spike row longer and put 6 or however many spikes you wanted in there. And you could add another log up here for weight, or a big rock, whatever you can come up with. But all that is just sitting on this branch. I cut it about halfway through and then broke off the rest, and it gave me a nice little shelf for it to sit on. And it just comes down, and at the bottom of it I have another stick, a peg drove into the ground, and it's setting right on the edge of that peg, and it's got my trip line looped around it. So when that line gets tripped, it'll just jerk that pull trigger off of my peg. Then I've just run the trip line across. I put a stake in the ground behind the trees over there. Another nice thing about this is, if you can tell how high that is off the ground, let me set this down for a second. My trip line is about a foot off the ground. What that's going to do is it's going to catch, you know, my medium-sized game that I want to walk through here, like a coyote or fox or hog, goat, whatever. They're going to trip it, but rabbits and squirrels and whatnot aren't going to mess up my trap. So what we're going to do, let me back you up to where you can see this thing in action. Okay. It's probably going to be one of those shaky videos trying to move the camera all around and tell you about it. So, actually let me move you over just a hair. You can see right down the side. And by the way, that lower crossbar that I put across the trees right there, what that's going to do is when the animal goes in there and these spikes, the swing arm swings down and the spikes hit it, it's going to shove that animal's body against that pole, and help sandwich. Instead of just my swing arm just knocking the animal out of the way, it'll sandwich that animal in between the pole and the spikes. And I've set it up to where those spikes go right under the edge of the crossbar. So let me trip it off. I'm going to go ahead and reset it and do it one more time, make sure you guys can see it. Maybe I'll show it to you from the other view next time. Once it's all set up, it's pretty easy to reset. I just have a loop in the end of my trip line. I just take my trigger pull, I mean, you can set this as hair trigger as you want to. Have it right on the edge of your peg. Let's see if I can get you a different view on this one. Sorry about all the movement. Dang it, sorry. My broken tripod, trying to get it situated. Actually, I want to put you right there. So this would be straight on. The animal will be coming through right here, and it's going to work whether they're going that way or this way. Doesn't matter which way they're going. They trip this line, it's just going to pull that peg off. Set it back up one more time, and then we'll talk about it while we take it apart. What I was saying earlier about there being a lack of good large game traps out there. Everybody's probably seen, you get you a nice spring branch and you cut it off and you tie it to a tree up at the top. You put a couple spikes in it, and so when it's triggered, that pole works as a spring to drive the spikes. Well, that's all well and good if it works right away, but the longer that's set, the more spring that branch is going to lose. So if it goes a day without getting tripped, it's going to not have enough spring in it to do the job. Okay, so I'm going to take you freehand. I'm going to run you through backwards how I made this. Get a knife, and we'll just start taking it apart. So the last thing I did is I hooked my loop on my trigger pull on that end, and I just pulled it just snug enough to where I could tie it off here without tripping it. And you just take out your trigger pull, take the string off of it, put that back in the pocket. Again, that was just a paracord inner. Then before that, I just drove this peg in the ground, my balance peg. And then before that, I put in my crossbar here. Let me show you real quick from the other side how I have that set up. So the spikes come through. My spikes are actually a little crooked. My bank line slipped off up there or something. Spikes come down and they actually go right underneath that peg. So you're sandwiching that animal in between these spikes and this pole. Take that off. So then before that, drop my pieces of bank line right there and I'll pick them up when I'm done. Before that, all I did was tied this part on. Okay. Then before that, I had tied this on. Dropping all my scrap pieces right there so I can pick them up. It's really easy to figure out the right height for that pole because you're going to make all this piece first. And if you wanted to do this, sorry for the movement, if you wanted to do this for, like I say, for even deer-sized game, just upscale everything. Make these poles here about 6 feet long. Make it a little wider, add more spikes and more weight, and it would work for deer. So then before that, I had tied this crossbar in. I had tied on my weight. It was pretty heavy chunk of wood. I actually cut it in half. I could have very easily doubled that weight on there. The first thing I did, because I used the same spike rail that I had the other day, was tied these on. Now on these you can see, should be able to see, all I did was notch them. Gave me a flat spot on both sides, and I also notched my rail of spikes so that when I lashed those on, they had good flat surfaces and locked in better than just tying two sticks together. And then of course the same spike rail I showed in the improved Klepsy version trap, the improved version. I showed how to make the spike, quick little tip on how to get them to shape like that real easy. And then of course you just point them, and that piece is just a piece of stick that I batoned in half, and I sandwiched all those spikes in there and lashed them up. Okay guys, like I say, it took me a couple hours. It was my first time making my contraption that I had in my head. Could very easily be enlarged for a deer trap. I think a lot better of a large game trap than anything else out there that I've seen. So, hope you liked it. Let me know what you think. Thank you for your views, your comments, your likes, your support, and we'll be back with you with another video.